afternoon to all of you and good afternoon to all those who have joined us online. So friends, from today we will start our case study section, and it will be a string of workshops. Today what we are going to do, let's try to understand that first. Today we will try to understand the art of case study writing. That's it, okay? And I will also discuss one sample case study which I have been looking for in the previous year's question papers, and I have picked one. So I will be discussing that. Today we will learn how to write case studies. From tomorrow onwards, we will take the 100 case studies as it is part of our syllabus and our course, okay? So without further ado, let's get started. Let's try to understand first what are case studies. But also one more announcement before I start, that I'm not going to give you any notes as far as the case studies are concerned. I'll give you some PDF files utilizing which you can always write the case studies and practice them in your sample workbook, okay? And so you scribble as I speak, and you can always have this opportunity to ask me relevant questions, okay? So case studies, as you know, is one of the most important part of GS paper 4. In fact, 120 marks of the examination as far as GS paper 4 is concerned is dedicated specifically to case studies. In 2013, when the syllabus of Civil Services main examination was amended and there were revolutionary changes, one optional was removed, 4 GS paper introduced, and for the first time in the history of civil services examination, ethics, integrity and aptitude, a subject like that, was made part of the main written examination. And when it was introduced, nobody had any idea about what this paper would be. And in the syllabus, there was this indication that there will be case studies in this paper, which is generally not the task or not the quest of UPSC when it designs GS paper 1, 2 and 3. And therefore, the most searched topics regarding GS paper 4 in 2013 was how to write a case study. Several years have passed, 12 years have passed, we have seen so many mains, and it still remains the #1 Google searched item with respect to GS paper 4. How to write case studies. Therefore, this class is very important for all of you. Pay attention, do not lose your focus, because if you lose your focus, then you will not learn the art of writing case studies, okay? So let's begin. Let's ask ourselves certain questions, and these questions will help us in understanding what we are trying to achieve. So first question is, what are case studies? Now, case studies, this is something which is not unique to say ethics. Case studies could be found in several disciplines, like say for example, have you heard about legal case studies or say clinical case studies? So what are case studies actually? Case studies are detailed and dedicated write-ups on a particular person or organization or event or phenomenon from an academic, clinical, legal, business, research or ethical perspective. That could be one workable definition with respect to what are case studies. So what are case studies? Case studies are a dedicated and detailed piece of writing on a particular person. There could be a case study on a person, or an event, organization, or phenomena. Phenomenon means a process. Okay. From an academic perspective or a legal perspective, clinical perspective, socioeconomic perspective, ethical perspective, or any other perspective. Okay. That is the meaning of case studies. So once we understand what are case studies, let's try to ask ourselves one more question, that why UPSC decided to include case studies in GS paper 4, or in other words, what is the significance of case studies as far as GS paper 4 is concerned. So one pure significance can be seen from the perspective of marks. GS paper 4 is of 250 marks. In that, generally the trend suggests that 130 would be theory and 120 would be case studies. So in percentage terms, you can say 48% of the marks go to case studies, although this is slightly misguiding. Why? Because unless you are good with your theory section, you will not be able to write case studies. So although nearly 50% of the paper is made out of case studies, you cannot write anything unless you are very strong in theory section. So the mark distribution might not do justice to the actual weightage of theory in the overall scheme of things. Do you understand that? So that is one significance why you need to be good with case studies, because if your aim is to score more than 125 marks in GS paper 4, then you cannot cross that target without writing excellent or at least more than average case studies. Okay. So therefore, case studies become very important. Secondly, through case studies, UPSC checks two things. First is whether the candidate who is appearing for the written examination has ethical competence or not. Ethical competence. Now, what do we mean by ethical competence? Ethical competence means that whether you are ethically sound or not. Like say, for example, a person may have intellectual competence. Intellectual competence can help you solve problems, say for example. Ethical competence will help you to find out the underlying ethical principles in a particular given situation. And the best way to check ethical competence is to put you in such kind of a situation. So therefore, these case studies, if you will notice, they are modeled on real life situations that often contain different kinds of ethical streams or different kinds of ethical thoughts. Sometimes these thoughts, ideas, imperatives also clash with each other, and which creates these situations ethically challenging. So the first idea is to check that whether you have ethical competence or not, and case studies are excellent for that thing. Okay. Ethical competence also indicates that whether you can apply ethics in your decision making or not, because case studies are purely based on the principle of applied ethics. Okay. So that's why this is the first thing that UPSC checks. The second thing is that whether you can make decisions so whether you have the ability of decision making or not. Now, when you are making decisions, you have to keep two things in mind. That is true also in your personal life as well as in your professional life. And what is that? First is your decision has to be legally correct. When it is legally correct, that decision is a just decision generally, provided that the laws in themselves were just. Okay. So the first thing is that the decision, whatever you are making as a civil servant, has to be legally correct, and second is it has to be morally correct. So not only the focus will be on legal correctness, whether you know the law or not, but the focus will also be on whether you are morally sound or not. Do you understand that? So you have ethical competence, you can identify the ethical challenges or the ethical questions or the ethical values imbibed in a particular situation. But whether you can solve that situation or not, whether you can give a solution to the problem at hand or not, and the solution that you provide, is it ethically also sound along with legal soundness? If it is not ethically sound but only legally sound, then such a decision is lopsided. Such a decision is not good for governance. The whole idea is to ensure that the person who would enter into the system will follow the principles of good governance and will not create, say, obstacles in the path of achieving the objectives of governance. Do you understand that? So this is the second thing that we must understand. So far we understood what are case studies. Case studies are nothing but detailed and dedicated write-ups on a particular subject, person, organization, event or phenomena from an academic, legal, clinical, socioeconomic or ethical perspective. And why UPSC introduced case studies in GS paper 4? Because UPSC wanted to check that whether the candidate who is appearing for the examination has ethical competence or not and can take ethical decisions or not. Do you understand that? So this ethical competence can be checked only by throwing you in real life kind of situations. So therefore, these case studies are modeled on real life situations. Decision making. When we take decisions, obviously there are two aspects to decision making. One is the legal aspect, the second one is the moral aspect. And when I say moral aspect in decision making, it not only includes your own consciousness, but also the prevalent ethics of the society. Do you understand that? So these are the two reasons why UPSC decided to introduce case studies in GS paper 4. So far so good? Understand that? Okay. So let's now try to understand that which are the areas in our syllabus from where we get the case study questions. So when we look at the areas from where UPSC is asking case study questions, we'll find there are three sections in the syllabus. One is unit 6, which is ethics in public administration, or sometimes also referred to as administrative ethics. From this section, you would see that most of the case study questions are asked. Generally, if we follow the pattern that has been adopted by UPSC for the past several years, you will see that out of the total number of questions, 6 questions come from case studies. Okay. So out of those 6 questions, nearly 4 emanate from this part, ethics in public administration. Therefore, as far as case studies is concerned, this unit becomes imperative. If somebody has not covered this unit properly, then that person is going to suffer terribly in the examination hall with respect to case studies. Second unit is unit number 7, which is probity in governance. Now here also you have certain kind of topics like, say, citizens charter, transparency, information sharing, work culture, etc. So some of the questions are also asked from this part, although I must put this on record that there is an overwhelming abundance of questions from unit number 6. So 6th unit becomes the key unit as far as case studies are concerned. Then apart from this unit, you would see unit number 3, second part. What is the third unit? Aptitude and foundational values for civil services. So there will be also questions from the second part of third unit, which means foundational values for civil services. From there also you would see that lot many questions are asked in the case study section, like cases based on professional integrity, objectivity, transparency, dedication to public service, accountability, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that other parts of the syllabus are not important as far as case studies are concerned. Like say for example, attitude, aptitude, emotional intelligence. These things are automatically checked. When questions are put from these sections, you will find out that these things are automatically checked while you are producing your arguments in the question paper. Then there is one particular unit in the paper which I feel is the heart and soul of this paper, which is moral thinkers from world and India. Many people feel that that unit is not required, but that unit is the game changer as far as case study answer writing is concerned, because if you do not back your arguments properly with philosophy, and what kind of philosophy? Moral philosophy and moral thought, you will not gain the weightage in the eyes of the evaluator, and therefore your marks will be little bit less. If you want to score better marks, then obviously you have to provide the ethical justification of your arguments. This is also known as moral reasoning, and in order to do that, you have to have a good hold over the moral thinkers and philosophers from world and India. Therefore, unit number 5 also becomes crucial. Just imagine you raising an argument and then you are backing that argument with the thoughts of Aristotle, then obviously the evaluator will find it hard to cut your marks. But if you just throw an argument without any kind of moral backing or moral reasoning, then there is a good chance that your marks would be deducted. So these are the 3 key areas. If you check the previous year's question papers on the basis of intelligent inference, you can say that these are the 3 areas: unit 6, unit 7 and unit 3rd second part. It means administrative ethics, probity in governance. Here cases mostly deal with the issue of corruption, and then foundational values for civil services, which is the second part of 3rd unit, aptitude and foundational values for civil services. Now, once we understand that which are the areas from where we get the case study questions, let's try to also understand that what are the type of case study questions that we get. Generally, there are 2 types of case study questions that you will encounter, and let us divide them into type 1 and type 2. Type 1 kind of case studies are those case studies where you are the protagonist. It means you are the actor. The case study will begin with these lines: you are the present district magistrate, you are the superintendent of police, you are the subdivisional magistrate, something like that. You are the principal of a school, you are the CEO of a company. So case studies of this kind could be categorized into this category. Type 1 case studies are those case studies where you are the protagonist. Protagonist means you are the focal point. Do you understand that? And then an ethical challenge is created around you to check how you are going to respond. It means your ethical competence as well as your ability to take ethical decisions, which must be also legally correct. Do you understand that? So in every case study, you have to bring in the legal angle as well, because remember that many of the ethical principles and standards are borrowed from law, and many ethical standards and principles are implemented through law. Therefore, law or the legal angle cannot be, say, kept aside when you are writing case study answers. So this is type 1. Type 2 are case studies which are based on issues, like say for example, political issues, social issue, economic issue, cultural issue, or any other kind of issue. These case studies seek from you an opinion, whereas these kind of case studies seek from you decision. What you are going to do if you are this, under this scenario, what would be your course of action? So that is a kind of decision seeking from you, whereas in these kind of case studies, like say suppose that forests have been cleared for the construction of cities, however it has developed into lopsided development. What do you think, to what extent nature or natural services could be compromised to get artificial services, even though they improve the ease of living? Do you understand that? So it's a kind of opinion which is sought from you. So type 2 means opinion. So these are the two types of case studies that you would encounter generally in your question paper. Now, when we look at the questions that are asked in case studies, you'll again see there is some variety. First type of questions are those questions where options are already given in front of you and you have to evaluate the option. Evaluating the option means that you have to find out the merit if you take that option and the demerit if you take that option. That is evaluation of the option. So in certain case studies you will find that the options are given in front of you and you have to pick an option. This is one category. Second is where no options are given to you, but you have to create options. The question would be simply, under such circumstances, what would you do? Something like that. So there you have to highlight that which are the different options that are available to you under such scenario. So you have to create the options, you have to evaluate the options, it means you have to find the merit and demerit in every option, and then you have to choose one option, and then you have to back that option ethically. Do you understand that? So these kind of case studies are generally more challenging than these kind, because here the options are already given to you and you have to pick one. Sometimes there is also a hybrid kind of case study question which includes both of them. It means suppose three options are given and the fourth statement says that also highlight if there is any other option. So there you have to generate further options. So there could be a hybrid kind of question with respect to case study as well. And third kind of case studies are where you are asked generic questions. Now these generic questions sometimes could be answered even without reading the case study. Now that is slightly redundant, but it's true that even without reading the case study question, you can answer these generic questions. Suppose I give a long case of a particular woman living in a certain part of the country facing all kinds of domestic violence and all of that. But later at the end of the case, this is the question that I ask. My question is, what are the steps that we can take to eliminate domestic violence from the country? Now that can be answered even without reading the case study question. So these are the three kinds of questions that you would mostly encounter. So as far as areas are concerned, the three hot topics or the hot spots in the syllabus are unit 6, unit 7 and unit 3's second part. Type of case studies, two types generally. One where you are the protagonist, second is issue based case study. Okay, and there is a good admixture of both in every year's question paper that has been conducted so far. And the questions, the nature of questions in the case studies are, first where options are given, you have to evaluate the option. Second, you have to create the option, sometimes a hybrid combination of both. And third is generic questions often attached at the end of the case study question. Okay, so reading the case study or not reading the case study doesn't help so much in these type of questions. Okay, so did you understand this? Okay, let's now try to understand that what should be the framework for a case study question. Now when we encounter the case study question, we have to produce an answer for that. Okay, now there are so many techniques that can be used to handle a case study question, but here I am giving you the most comprehensive approach with respect to case study answer writing. I am not saying that this is the only way to write the case study answer, but this is the most comprehensive way. If you adopt this one, then definitely there is a good chance that you will be writing great answers for most of the case studies. And here I am assuming that the case is complete case, and that's why I was going through the previous year's question papers to find one complete case where we can apply all these things when we are writing the answer. In most of the case studies, you would not be required to include all the steps that we will be discussing. But in an ideal scenario, you have to highlight all the steps. Okay, some of them have to be written, some of them have to be done only in the mind or in your worksheet or rough sheet. Okay, so let's try to understand the framework for a case study answer. So in order to simplify it, I have reduced it into 10 steps, though there could be more steps, but I have reduced it into 10 steps. So we can also call it the 10-step strategy with respect to case study. And you have to keep these steps in mind while you are encountering any case study. So focus and also scribble along whatever you want to write. Step 1 would be to highlight the facts of the case. Now, with practice, you would not spend a lot of time in this step, but initially when you will start, I would suggest that you should focus on this step first. What am I saying? Highlight the facts of the case. What are the facts of the case? Facts of the case are the information which is provided in the case study question. Okay, it's no need that you have to again write them separately. You can just underline them or highlight them, whatever, for the sake of your convenience. Why we want to highlight the facts of the case? What is the advantage of doing this? Because while we will be writing our answers, we will be making some assumptions. Now, these assumptions should be based on the facts of the case. These assumptions should not be wild guesses. Do you understand that? They have to be rational assumptions. And in order to be rational, they have to be objective in nature. In order to be objective, they have to be based on the facts of the case. Like, say, for example, we can assume that an IAS officer will have certain discretionary powers. So it's a fair assumption. But if you do not have the facts at your hand, then you will not be able to make such kind of intelligent and fact-based assumption. This will also help in creating a factual summary of the case. So when you get that factual summary, you will be able to quickly read the question or the key aspects of the question. Now, as I said, that initially it is a time-taking process, because many people might feel that this statement is useless in the case and does not make a lot of sense. But with the passage of time, you will understand that there could be some explicit facts and some implicit facts hidden within the explicit facts, okay, or some primary facts and then some derived facts. So whatever it is, you have to identify or you have to highlight the facts of the case so that you can make rational and fact-based assumptions, and you also create a factual summary. That is step number 1. Then comes the second step, step 2. After highlighting the facts of the case, you have to identify the stakeholders of the case. Now, what do we mean by this? Stakeholders of the case. Stakeholders of the case are those entities. It could be individuals, organizations, or any other kind of entity which has interest in the case, either direct or indirect, primary or derived. So stakeholders are those entities, it could be individual or institution or organization or anything which has interest in the subject matter of the case study, and the case impacts them. Do you understand that? Directly or indirectly, in the short term or in the long term, in any way. So stakeholders can also be divided on the basis of their significance. So there could be primary stakeholders, and there could be other stakeholders. The primary stakeholders are generally those stakeholders which are mentioned in the case, whereas other stakeholders are those which may get impacted by the decision whatever you are contemplating. Like say for example, in most of the case studies where public interest is at stake, the society at large become a stakeholder, even if it is not mentioned directly in the case study. Do you understand that? So primary stakeholders are the specific stakeholders. You can also call them as the specific stakeholders. Specific stakeholders are those who are mentioned in the case, and then you have the other stakeholders. We can also call them the generic stakeholders. So you have specific stakeholder and you have generic stakeholder. So in any given case, there could be multiple number of stakeholders, and some of them would be specific stakeholders and some of them would be generic stakeholders. Now this identification of stakeholders also is an intelligent exercise. What I would suggest here is that you should not identify more than 5 to 6 stakeholders. You should not go beyond that. Why? Because you will not be able to do justice to all of them in your answer writing. Okay, because the word limit is 250 words. You don't have to write an essay, although it is like the questions are big. The length of the answer is only 250 words. So keep this in mind. It's like a 15 marker for a GS paper 1, 2 and 3, whereas in ethics that is 20 marker. Okay, 250 words, 20 marker. So that's why you have to be very intelligent while you are using your words. So do not identify, this would be my suggestion, do not go beyond 5 to 6 stakeholders, not beyond that. Okay. Then comes step number 3. Once you have identified the stakeholders, you have to now identify the interest of the stakeholders. So you have to identify the interests of the stakeholders. When I say interests of the stakeholder, what do I mean? Every stakeholder has certain kind of interest. Do you understand that? Like say for example, say government may have interest in preserving law and order. People may have interest in getting some benefits or services from the government. Do you understand that? Investors may have interest in development of a fair investment climate. So every stakeholder has one or more interests. So once you identify the stakeholders, the next thing is that you have to identify the interests of various stakeholders. Suppose we have stakeholder 1, stakeholder 2, stakeholder 3, stakeholder up to n. So we may have interests as I1, I2, I3 up to In. So every stakeholder will have one or more interests. So you have to identify those interests as well. That has to be the third step. Then comes step 4. Once you have identified the interests, there is a possibility that interests might also clash with each other, or the interest of one stakeholder clashing with the interest of another stakeholder. Like say for example, clearing of the forest for the settlement of people. Now people may have the right to own houses, that's their interest. Similarly, say biodiversity services are also required for sustainable development, so that is another interest. Okay, so there could be a situation where two interests may clash with each other it could happen that the same stakeholder has two interests, say I1 and I1 dash, which may clash with each other, or I1 may clash with I2 as well. So the step 4 has to be to identify the conflicts of interests. So this is sometimes directly asked as a part of the questions in the case study, that identify the conflicts of interest given in this case. Even if it is not asked, it is your duty to identify the conflicts of interest. Okay. Then comes step 5. Every interest has an underlying value. Without that value, you cannot have the interest. Like say for example, public interest has an underlying value, and what is that? The value is dedication to public services. So if you are dedicated to public services, you will uphold public interest. Do you understand that? Suppose you want to progress in life, so there could be a value underlying that, and what is that value? Self-preservation. You want to preserve yourself, and that's why you want to progress in life. So every interest has an underlying value. In fact, interest is a derivative of any value. All interests are based on certain values. Like say for example, business interests have to be based on certain values. Like say for example, profit could be a value. Do you understand that? So once you have identified the interests, what you have to do next is you have to identify the values which are underlying those interests. So V1, V2, V3 up to Vn depends upon how many stakeholders you have identified, how many interests you have identified, and based on that you may also identify the values. So next stage has to be, or next step has to be, the identification or identify the values. What kind of values? These are the underlying values. Underlying values are those values which underlie any interest. So if you have an interest, there will be an underlying value as well. Without the value, the interest cannot exist. Did you understand that? Once you have done that, if interests can come in conflict with each other, values can also clash with each other. So the next thing is that you have to see that how the values are clashing, or you can say that you have to identify the ethical dilemma, because value clashes are nothing but ethical dilemma. In fact, conflict of interest is also a type of ethical dilemma. Do you understand that? Ethical dilemma is a situation where two or more values may come in conflict with each other and you cannot uphold all of them. You have to drop one and you have to pick another. So whatever you drop creates a kind of dissatisfaction in your mind. Why? Because that is also important ethically. Do you understand that? That is ethical dilemma or dharma sankat, as we discussed in our classes. Ethical dilemma or ethical paradoxes. So next you have to identify the dilemmas and the paradoxes. Like say for example, two duties may come in conflict. Like say for example, national duty versus duty towards family, that can come in conflict. So this is what kind of paradox? It's a paradox of deontology, because duty means deontology. So two duties coming in conflict with each other. So you have to identify those paradoxes as well. Then comes step 7. Once you have done up until this point, other things become relatively easy. I am not saying that they would be very easy, but they become relatively easy because now you are in the thought process. Okay. Next is you have to evaluate the given options and if you don't have the options given, then you have to create and evaluate the options. Options are the various decisions that you can take. So you are evaluating every decision or every option or every choice that is available at your disposal. So when you are evaluating, what you have to do is you have to highlight the merit and you have to highlight the demerit in the option, and there you have to take a decision on the basis of what dominates, whether the merit dominates or the demerit dominates. If the merit dominates, you pick the option. If the demerit dominates, you drop the option. And it is not always about how many merits and how many demerits. It's also about what is the quality of the merit and what is the quality of the demerit. Do you understand that? So not only quantity but also quality of merits and demerits, they have to be taken into consideration. Merit and demerit means what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages. If you pick this option, what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages. This up until this point, from step number 1 to step number 7, this is known as ethical mapping. Those who will be able to do this ethical mapping properly, they will be able to solve the case study question appropriately. Otherwise, you are going to struggle. Generally, where aspirants mostly begin, they begin from here. They start evaluating the certain options that are available. Once you have evaluated all the options, obviously you have to pick one and you have to drop other. So this is the moment of truth. Herein lies the maximum marks, which is step number 8, where you have to make the ethical decision or ethical decision making. This ethical decision making, whatever you are taking, whatever decision you are opting for, you have to opt that in the light of the previous step. You have evaluated all these steps, you have highlighted the merit and demerit. So this step was also a part of this. Do you understand that? Or maybe after evaluation you found that none of them could be the right course of action. So you are coming up with another alternative. But that another alternative is also based on this evaluation that you have conducted in the previous step. Then you make the decision. You have to take the decision. This is the moment of truth. Herein also lies maximum marks. But this step is incomplete without step 9, which is the penultimate step. Here, the decision that you have taken, you have to justify that decision. Why you have taken this decision. Now, that justification cannot be purely on the basis of the advantage or the disadvantage of this particular move, but it has to be also be grounded on moral philosophy. So here you have to do the ethical justification, or you can also call this as the stage of ethical reasoning or moral argument. And as I said, that here lies the maximum marks only when you do this as well with it. Otherwise, you are not going to get marks. And this step 9 is actually nothing but your knowledge about the 5th unit. Means contribution of moral thinkers and philosophers from world and India, their ideas, how you use those ideas and you back your arguments. Like say for example, an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. If you use that justification to back your option, then obviously you are going to score more than your competitor. Okay. So this is the penultimate stage. many people feel हो गया यहाँ पे खत्म, case study is done. They start from this step, they evaluate the option, they pick one option, they do some kind of justification. Mostly people don't justify it, but even if some people are justifying, they justify and then close the case study. This is not where the case study closes. There's one more step, and that is the last one, step 10, where you have to provide a conclusion. Now, what is this conclusion? Conclusion has two parts. One is the way forward. Here you let the evaluator know that I am not restricted by the thought of this particular case study. Rather, I understand the larger issue at hand. So, I will not limit my understanding to only the options that are available in this case study or the answer that I am giving for this case study. I am also suggesting the way forward. Like say for example, there is a case study which deals with say corruption. So, you are also highlighting what are the steps that could be taken to eliminate corruption from the system. Even if it is not asked explicitly in the case study, you make it a part of your habit of answer writing in case studies that you will always come up with certain kinds of way forwards. Do you understand that? That is the first part of the conclusion. And then there is the exit from the case study. Exit has to be really smooth, and that you can do, what I feel the best way you can do is through a quote. So, there will be 6 case studies. So, if you keep say 10 quotes also prepared well in advance, you may be able to use maybe 3 or 4 at least in 3 case studies. So, in 3 case studies you can make a graceful exit. Do you understand that? So, this is a framework that can be adopted for case study answer writing. We can call this as one of the model frameworks for case study answer writing. Again, I am putting this on record that it is not the only way to handle case studies, and in most of the case studies you will see that all the steps are not required. But if you are including all the steps while you are writing your case study answer, there would be very little margin जहाँ पे आपके नंबर कम हो सकते हैं. Mostly you will get better marks in the case studies even than your theory section. Okay, so those who are scoring 150 plus, even 160 in ethics, they are the people who are writing very good case studies, and for that you have to do all of this. So, I am just repeating. Step 1 is highlight the facts of the case so that you have a factual summary, so that you can make rational assumptions. Second is you identify the stakeholders. You can divide them into specific and generic stakeholders, primary and other stakeholders. Specific or primary stakeholders are those which are mentioned in the case directly, and others are those which can be derived from the understanding of the issue at hand. Then step 3 is identify the interest of all the stakeholders, as many stakeholders as you have identified. You can identify the interests as well. Then identify the conflicts of interest. It means how the interests are coming in conflict with each other or clashing against each other. Then identify the values, the underlying values, because every interest has an underlying value and no interest can survive without an underlying value. Do you understand that? And then you have to identify the clash in values, which is nothing but the ethical paradox or the ethical dilemma. And then you evaluate the various options which are given, or you have created the option. After your creation, you evaluate the options, then take the ethical decision as per your evaluation of the merits and demerits of every option. Then you justify your decision, why you have taken this decision. You need to give the reason for that. That is known as ethical reasoning or moral argument, herein where you use scholars, thinkers in order to add more weight to your arguments. No need of using them directly in the start of the case study. It does not make much of a sense. And finally, you have to conclude. Here you have to give the way forward plus the exit. The way forward could be very similar to GS paper 2 and GS paper 3, depending upon what kind of case is at hand. Do you understand that? And then the exit has to be like more or less like the essay paper, where you exit with a quote, or you can also exit with a thought. But exiting with a quote will definitely have more impact than exiting with a thought. But let me tell you this, my dear friends, that I don't want you to just by heart this. Do Do you get that? Because we want intelligent people, thinking people who understand the problem at hand and then deliver. We don't want products from a factory. People who have something in their mind and they want to adapt that thing to every situation. That is not what we are looking for. But since this is a paper which has a specific syllabus and nearly 12 years the paper has been conducted, so every year there are 6 questions, so we have generally 72 questions at this moment at our hands. So after analyzing the 72 questions, you will find all these things that I have discussed in the class. So we understand what is a case study. We also understand that why UPSC introduced the case study, because they wanted to check the ethical competence and decision making ability of the candidate. We also understand the areas from where most of the case study questions are asked. We also understand the type of the case study questions. We also understand the questions, the nature of the questions in the case study, and we also understand the framework that we must adopt to handle a case study question. यहाँ तक बताओ clear है बात? बिल्कुल clear है. So now what we will do is we will take a question from a previous year question paper, okay, and we'll try to solve that question. So what I want from you people is that I will discuss the case study question, but before that I want you to contemplate over this question. So will you be able to do that? Okay, use the 10-step strategy and then try to see that whether you can find out something with respect to this one or not. So this is a case study question which I have taken from 2018, because I find this question to be a really good one, and one which is often, or these kind of questions are often repeated in your question paper. Okay, so look at this. The question goes something like this: as a senior officer in the ministry. It means this is what kind of case study? Protagonist based. Do you understand that? You based case study. So as a senior officer in the ministry, you have access to important policy decisions and upcoming big announcement such as road construction projects before they are notified in the public domain. The ministry is about to announce a mega road project for which the drawings are already in place. Sufficient care was taken by the planners to make use of the government land with the minimum land acquisition from private parties. Compensation rate for the private parties was also finalized as per government rules. Care was also taken to minimize deforestation. Once the project is announced, it is expected that there will be a huge spurt in the real estate prices in and around that area. Meanwhile, the minister concerned insists you that you realign the road in such a way that it comes closer to his 20 acres farmhouse. He also suggests that he would facilitate the purchase of a big plot of land in your wife's name at the prevailing rate, which is very nominal, in and around the proposed mega road project. He also tries to convince you by saying that there is no harm in it as he is buying the land legally. He even promises to supplement your savings in case you do not have sufficient funds to buy the land. However, by the act of realignment, a lot of agricultural lands has to be acquired, thereby causing a considerable financial burden on the government and also the displacement of the farmers. As if this is not enough, it will involve cutting down of a large number of trees, denuding the area of its green cover. Do you understand that? So I'll just summarize the case for you. You are a senior officer in the ministry. Now look here very carefully. Neither your position nor the name of the ministry has been highlighted. Do you understand that? It's a very generic statement. It says that you are a senior officer in some ministry. Now, because of your position in that ministry, you have access to information even before that information is disclosed in the public. and the ministry is coming up with a mega road project, and for that sufficient care has been undertaken, land has been acquired, compensation has been paid, everything according to law has been decided, okay, and some forest cover has also been cleared, but minimum deforestation has been ensured in the creation of that road project. Now suddenly what happens is the minister in charge, obviously you are working in a ministry, so there must be a minister in charge. So the minister in charge says that please realign the road and realign it in such a fashion so that it goes close to my 20-acre farmhouse. Why? Because this is a mega road project, maybe an expressway or something like that. So once it is operational, you can understand by logic also that the land prices in and around them will escalate. So the whole idea is to sell it at exorbitant prices or hold it at a very high value, whatever the case may be. He also kinds of influences you to do it by saying that he will ensure that you also get a piece of land. To this newly aligned road, you also get a piece of land adjoining that newly aligned road, and it will be in your wife's name. And he also says that if you do not have the funds, I will supplement the funds. And he says that there is nothing wrong in it because I will be purchasing the land legally. Obviously, he is going to purchase it legally. He is not grabbing the land. There is no land grab here, right? It's only a pure case of purchasing the land. But the only thing here that has to be kept into mind is that if you agree to what the minister has to say, then there will be more land acquisition. More land acquisition means more displacement and more compensation. So financial burden as well as burden on the farmers. Plus, if this is not enough, there will be more deforestation also. It means loss of green cover. So this is the case. Is the case understood by everybody? Okay. So let's see what are the questions. The questions are, faced with this situation, what will you do? Critically examine various conflicts of interests and explain what your responsibilities are as a public servant. Okay. So you try to answer these three questions. I give you good 5 minutes. Okay. So you try to answer these three questions. So question is, faced with this situation, there are three questions here actually. What will you do? First question. Examine various conflicts of interest. Second question. And third, responsibilities as a public servant. Third question. So conflict of interest, your course of action, and your responsibilities. Three things that you have to identify. Okay. The case is clear to everybody? Okay. Your time starts now. After that, I'll discuss this one. Use the 10-step strategy to solve this one. last couple of minutes. Is it visible there? Okay, how many of you have taken a decision? Raise your hands. How many of you have taken a decision? I'm not looking for the decision, but you were able to take a decision. Raise your hands handsomely so I can see. Okay, okay. How many of you failed to take a decision? Raise your hands that you could not take a decision. Okay, it's fair. Okay. How many of you found it really challenging to address this case study? Really challenging, like you had no idea what to do. Is there anybody? That is what I am more interested in. It means you have some idea, right? Vague idea. So before you come up with your answers, let's do one thing. Let's try to understand the facts of the case. Okay. So when you look at the facts of the case, see, first is this thing, senior officer. You are a senior officer in a ministry and you have access to important policy decisions. Okay. Why? Because of your seniority, obviously. Even when the information, before the information comes out in public domain, the ministry is about to announce a mega road project. That is another fact of the case. Okay. And drawings are already in place, sufficient care has been taken. So of government land, most of it would be on government land with minimum land acquisition from private parties. Most of it would be on government land and minimum land acquisition. Compensation has also been promised as per government rules. So there is no flouting of the rules also here in this procedure. And once the project is announced, it is expected that there will be spurt in real estate prices. And obviously, there is minimum deforestation also when the project has been planned. Okay, as a part of the project, there will be minimum deforestation also. Then herein the thing gets slightly murky, right? Herein where the ethical challenge starts. यहाँ तक तो बिल्कुल सही है, कुछ भी प्रॉब्लम नहीं है इस केस में. यहाँ से चीजें जो हैं थोड़ी चैलेंजिंग होनी शुरू हो जाती है. So there is this minister, particular minister, who is obviously in charge of the entire ministry, says that please realign this, realign the road. And why to realign it? So that it comes close to my 20-acre farmhouse. Okay. Obviously, he has some ulterior motives in mind, some vested interests, and he says that he will also save you and there is no harm. He will help you purchase a big plot in your wife's name, and he'll also supplement the resources if you fall short on them. But if you have to do this, what would happen? Agricultural land has to be acquired, financial burden on the government, displacement of number of farmers, and trees have to be cut down. So these are the facts of the case. Okay. Now you come up with your answers. What you have thought of. Raise your hands and speak so that we can have a meaningful discussion. Yes. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. 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 Hmm. 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 Okay. 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 Very good. What course of action will you take under this? Will you realign the road? Hmm. 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 Way forward. Hmm. Okay. 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 Hmm. 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 Good. 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 Others also, please come up with your answers. Good. Yes. Hmm. Be louder. Hmm. 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 Okay. Hmm. 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 You are not going to agree to this proposal. Are you sure about it? Okay. Hmm. 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 Okay. Hmm. 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 Very good, dear. Very good. Anybody else? Yes. Hmm. Sure. Okay. 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 Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Hmm. 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 Okay. Okay. Fine. Very good. Very good. Yes. You'll reject the offer. सोच लो अच्छा ऑफर है. Okay. Hmm. 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 Virtues. Okay. 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 Mills quote. Okay. Okay. Very good. Very good argument. Will your wife agree to that proposal? Okay. Yes. Others also, please participate. Yes, please go on, dear. Stage is yours. Hmm. 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 Okay. Okay. What are your responsibilities as a civil servant in such a scenario? Hmm. 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 Okay. Okay. Good. Anybody else would like to speak on this? See, these workshops will have a utility. You understand the word utility, right? They will have a utility only when you participate. Otherwise, you will not learn the art of case study answer writing. It's not necessary that you give the right answer or the best answer. I just want you to participate so that you can think. The moment you participate, you become a stakeholder in the class. Otherwise, you become a mute spectator. Okay. Yes, please go on. Others also. Yes. Hmm. Engineer. अच्छा हाँ हाँ. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Hmm. ठीक है. ठीक है. Good. Others also. Yes. Hmm. Yes. That was one of the topics also. Remember? So this case study, can you understand, flows from unit number 6, 7, as well as the second part of third unit? Everything is included in this? Yes. Wow. Sure. पक्का. सोच लो. Hmm. 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 Okay. Okay. Hmm. 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 You will be setting a wrong precedent. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Very good. Very good. Very good. You backed your arguments properly. Others also. Yes. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. 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 Okay. Hmm. What will you say to the minister while you are rejecting his offer? मुझे नहीं चाहिए. This is what you are going to say. How would you reject it? Everybody will reject it, right? कोई ऐसा तो नहीं बैठा हुआ है who will accept. So if everybody is going to reject it, what you are going to say to the minister? I reject. Hmm. Hmm. How would you say to the minister? My question is very direct. What would you say to the minister? I reject. Is this what you are going to say? Or I am performing my public duty, therefore I won't be able to accept your offer? Is this what you are going to say? Or you lose your temper before the minister? Will you lose your temper before the minister if he keeps on insisting? See, these are real life situations. Okay. Huh? You'll threaten the minister? You'll threaten a person sitting on a constitutional post, being yourself in a constitutional post? Huh. 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 Okay. 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 Yes, that could be a practical way, by the way. That could be a practical way. Yes. Okay. Hmm. Okay. 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 Huh. Okay. 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 You'll deny the offer. Sure. For sure. You're saying. Okay. Very good. Okay. Yes. Yes. Go on, dear. Hmm. 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 Good. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. 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 Okay. Hmm. 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 Okay. Very good. Very good. Okay. Anybody else would like to add to this? Okay, so let's take this case. Okay, so the case we already understand. There are three questions. Faced with this situation, what will you do? First question. Second question, critically examine various conflicts of interest and explain what your responsibilities are as a public servant. So obviously we have already identified the facts of the case. I won't go into it. Let's start with the stakeholders. And I told you, remember that when you are identifying the stakeholder, do not go beyond 6. That would be sufficient. Okay. So let's try to understand the stakeholders. The stakeholders in this case would be, first stakeholder would be you. I am writing you. You should write I. You understand that? You, it means what? If possible, also highlight the designation. And what is the designation here? Senior official. Okay. The second stakeholder obviously would be the minister. Most probably, we can make an intelligent assumption here that the minister is in charge of the ministry, though could be also a minister of state. You understand that? But since we are not clear with it, that's why we are not writing it here, that who is in charge. Got it? But we are just highlighting minister. Then obviously government. Which government? Government of India or government of a particular state? Is it given in the case anywhere? No. Do you understand that? But in this kind of case, is there forest cover and agricultural land acquisition? So all these are part of what? Both center and state. Do you understand that? So we can say government of center as well as the state or states, we don't know. Do you understand that? That the forest cover could go beyond one state. So this is what? This is intelligent assumption that we are making on the basis of the facts of the case. Okay. Then obviously farmers. Can I also say along with farmers, though it is not mentioned in the case, but can I also hold farmers, agricultural laborers? Will they also get affected? Yes. And can I also say landowners? Not necessary that those who are owning the land are also cultivating it. So I'm making it more clear. They also become stakeholders. Then can I say environmental activists? Yes or no? Then conservationists. Why I'm highlighting conservationists? Because if the green patch is cleared, there will also be a loss to biodiversity. So there will be conservationists also into the picture. Can I say then the judiciary? Will judiciary also become a stakeholder? There are laws into question. So if there is a dispute, you will go where? To the courts. So judiciary and can I say tribunals? They are also stakeholders. Okay. I can also add just one more, but I suggest not adding any further. You can write society. Society at large. That also become a stakeholder. You understand that? Now you tell me how many specific stakeholders in this? You, minister, then government, farmer. They are specific stakeholders or primary stakeholders. Everybody else is generic stakeholder or derived stakeholder. यहाँ तक बात clear है? Do you understand that? Now, there are three parts of the question. First is, what will you do? Second is the conflicts of interests. And third is responsibilities. As a public servant. Now, what is the total marks that is allotted? 20 marks. Do you understand that? So it's like 6.66, something kind of that weightage, every question, but doesn't look like, right? Logically, if we see, the highest marks lie where? Where do you think in these three questions? The highest marks lie where? First one, what will you do? Do you understand that? This is where your ethical competence is being checked. Do you understand that? Also your ethical decision making is being checked. Do you get it? No need of answering it in this order. This is a trap. Do you understand that? What will you do? आप पहले ही बता दे रहे हो. Then how would you justify it further? So it should go like this. Remember the 10-step strategy. You should follow that while you are answering. This should be your first answer, the conflicts of interest. Then this should be your second answer. What are the responsibilities under such scenario? Then you can say what I am going to do. You have already highlighted your responsibilities. Third is this one. What will you do under such a given scenario? So let's start with this one, the first question, as we have identified for ourselves, the conflicts of interest. For identifying the conflicts of interest, we have to understand the interests of the stakeholders. But here, due to paucity of time, I am directly highlighting the conflict of interests. Okay. So the first conflict of interest is private, or let me do it here, private gain versus public interest. Can I say this is the first conflict of interest? Very apparent. Do you understand that? Then there could be following the commands when you joined the service. You already agreed to follow the Civil Services Code of Conduct. The Civil Services Code of Conduct specifically highlights that you have to follow the commands of your senior. Is the minister your senior or not? Yes. So you have to follow his commands. So it's a kind of conflict of interest. Do you understand that? Versus, can I say, environmental and social impact. That would be another conflict of interest, isn't it? Because more land acquisition means more rehabilitation, more financial burden, and also clearing of green patches. That would be environmentally non-sustainable move. You get it? And you know that every interest has an underlying value. So if we just look at the value here under this, you'd see it is nothing but self-preservation. Private gain is always motivated by the thought of self-preservation. You want to preserve yourself. Okay. So self-preservation. If you look at this public interest ka agar dekhoge, so the underlying value here is public trust, which has been placed on you. Do you understand? That's valuable. Is public trust valuable or not? It's very valuable. It flows as a part of the social contract. Do you get it? Then following the commands, if you look here, the values, it would be dedication to administrative procedures. When you follow the command of the seniors, it shows your dedication towards the administrative procedures, rules, etc. Versus when you try to analyze this, this is dedication towards the public service. और यहीं से आप अपना केस बनाना शुरू कर दिए हो, क्योंकि dedication to public service is a foundational value of civil service. Do you understand that? So you're dedicated to the procedure or you're dedicated to public service. When you're dedicated to public service, you will always uphold public trust. You understand that? And you will take into consideration environmental and social impact, and you will celebrate public interest. So the weight is on this side. Can you understand? We are building it in such a fashion. So this would be the conflict of interest. You can add more and more conflict of interest also. Can you think of any one more conflict of interest? Like, say, for example, think of this. Transport network development versus biodiversity conservation. Whatever road you are building, it will add to the transport network. But when you may add to the transport network, but definitely there will be biodiversity losses as well. Just imagine this. Suppose the road was going like this. Here is where the farmhouse is. Now the minister asks you, instead of this, you make it like this. Do you get it? This is what the minister is asking you. Although he will benefit, but there would be other people also who have not opted for it, but still they will end up benefiting. Do you get it? So there will be some economic activity because of this twist also. You understand that? So that will be adding to the transport network. So here the value, if you check, this is economic profit versus compassion towards species, flora and fauna. So you can keep on identifying such kind of things. Next question that we must address is this one: responsibilities as a public servant. So what are the responsibilities? As a public servant under this scenario. First responsibility is obviously upholding the public trust. That has to be the first responsibility. Then you are also the custodian of public resources. What kind of resources? All kinds of resources, financial and non-financial. Environmental resources are also public resources. Do you understand that? Third, your responsibility is to showcase professional integrity. Transparency, objectivity, it means based on facts, and impartiality in decision making. You can also include values like non-partisanship, although this is not a political issue. Do you understand that? So that's why that doesn't make much sense. Rather, impartiality makes. Do you get it? Then, as a civil servant, you are also expected that you will set a benchmark to follow. Future officers can always study this case, or this could become a case study during the training program, that such a scenario occurred before one officer and this is how he responded. So you have a responsibility to set a benchmark also. Why? Because civil servants have to be leaders as well. Do you get it? That is also your responsibility. Then you must also ensure that you do not compromise the law and due process. Remember, in the case it was highlighted in the first paragraph that the sketches have been prepared after keeping the law in mind and everything has been done as part of due process. So these are your responsibilities. जैसे कि मैंने आपको बताया कि आप ये सोचो 6 मार्क होगा उसका, तो ज़्यादा लिखने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, आपके पास उतने वर्ड्स ही नहीं है, 250 वर्ड्स है, ठीक है ना. तो 5 रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी आप ऐसे दिखा दोगे तब भी चलेगा. यू कैन कीप ऑन एडिंग मोर टू दिस. नाउ कम्स द बिग क्वेश्चन, what will you do? Okay, so what will you do under such a scenario? So what are the options that are available to us at this moment? First option, agree to the proposal of the minister. Just agree to the proposal of the minister, change the alignment of the road. What are the advantages in this? Obviously, advantages are this. First, there will be private gain. There will be following of the commands. You will not come into any kind of confrontation with the minister. In fact, that could also help you in your career trajectory, at least in the short run, if not in the long run. But what are the disadvantages? All of this, you will undermine public trust, public interest, you will sacrifice professional integrity, which is also an underlying value of public interest, and you will not show dedication towards the public service. So is this an option for us here? No, definitely not. So we discard it. Second is that go on leave. That's also an option. Just go on leave and shift the decision making to some other official. मैं नहीं, वर्मा जी देख. ठीक. That's why let's evaluate that option. Let's see. Go on leave and shift the decision making. Yes. हाँ, हम खुद से ही कर रहे हैं. नहीं, नहीं, क्योंकि कोई वहाँ पे कोई ऑप्शन दिया नहीं हुआ आपके पास. सो हाँ, हाँ, आप सीनियर मोस्ट हैं, ये तो नहीं लिखा हुआ है कहीं पे. लिखा हुआ है? Yes, this is false assumption. You understand that? You can shift the decision making. Even अगर आप सीनियर मोस्ट भी, आप लीव पे नहीं जा सकते अगर आपकी कोई पर्सनल इमरजेंसी आ जाए तो. तब तो कोई ना कोई इंचार्ज हो जाएगा. आपको चार्ज तो किसी को देकर जाना पड़ेगा ना. जो हॉरिजॉन्टली आपके स्टेज पे होंगे, आपकी पोस्ट पे होंगे, आप उन्हें चार्ज देकर जाएंगे. See, here what we are doing is we are just highlighting that why we have opted for this option, because we had all these options. You understand that? And we are picking the most ethical one. तो अगर आपको ये बताना है कि this is the most ethical decision, you have to highlight the all the decisions that are possible under this scenario. Do you understand that? Then it gives weightage to your decision making. Just think like that. Okay. जैसे कि ऐसे सोचकर that कभी अगर आपने कोई स्टेडियम विजिट किया हो, समझ लो कोई क्रिकेट का स्टेडियम विजिट किया हो या फुटबॉल स्टेडियम कभी विजिट किया होगा, तो आपने देखा होगा, आई विल नॉट टेक द ब्रांड नेम्स, ओके, बट आपने देखा होगा कि देयर इज a particular dispenser from where you get a soft drink, okay, and it's one of the very popular soft drink, and adjacent to it is the competitor's dispenser. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? So no names, please. So I'm saying that on one side there is the dispenser which is dispensing a particular soft drink, and next to it, adjacent to it, is its competitors. Do you get it? Now look at the beauty of marketing here. If there is only one, okay, then you make the decision whether I want it or whether I don't want it. But when there are two, you make the decision whether I want this or I want that. So you get it? This is how marketing agencies play with your mind. Do you get it? So similarly, when we show that these are the decisions that are available to us, I opted for this. See, already playing with the mind of the evaluator here, that why I am choosing this, because I have definite logic behind it. Okay, and when you will justify it, this could be identified. Okay, let's go back to this. Obviously, we discard this one, right? Going on leave or shifting the decision making, is that a right approach? Is that a right approach under this scenario? Definitely not. Why? Why? Because this shows that you have an escapist tendency. Like you cannot talk directly what you want to do. Rather, you have an escapist tendency. अब भाग जाओगे जब भी stress पड़ेगा आपके ऊपर, अब भाग जाओगे. Do you understand that? Also, this shows that you lack what? You lack leadership skills, which is one of the prerequisite in public life according to the Nolan principles. You understand that? So here you can also highlight that according to the Nolan principles in public life, a person holding public office should showcase leadership, whereas by going on leave or shifting the burden of decision making on somebody else, you are actually showing an escapist tendency. You are also failing your team at the time of crisis. This also therefore cannot be the option. So what is the third option? The third option is do not agree to the proposal of the minister. Prima facie, this looks like the answer, that you do not agree to the proposal of the minister. Obviously, you show the advantages of doing it. These are the advantages of doing it. When you do not agree to the proposal of the minister, you uphold public trust. You also ensure that environmental and social impact is done, professional integrity, public trust, dedication towards the public service, everything. Plus, all these responsibilities are also fulfilled when you do not agree to the proposal of the minister. But is it so simple to not agree to the proposal of the minister? Herein, you have to highlight how you are not going to agree to the proposal of the minister. So this answers the what. Now you have to answer the how. How you are not going to agree to the proposal of the minister. So here you will have some subparts. First is you will use persuasion. अपना syllabus हमेशा याद रखना. From there you will get the topics. You will persuade the minister. And what kind of persuasion you can do? Remember the persuasion tools that we discussed in the class? You can pick any. Like say for example, I am picking here fear and relief. You can say to the minister that, sir, what you are proposing, if we follow that, then there could be problem in the future if there is an inquiry commission. Also, if somebody seeks a reply through an RTI, we have to give the reply. And under such a scenario, if it is found that we realign the road, then it will be not only administratively disastrous, but politically suicidal in your case. The party president may throw you out of the party. Further, your prospects of political growth may also get hurt. A senior bureaucrat can speak like that to a politician. Okay, you are no junior officer, you are a senior officer. So you every day you are spending with the minister. So you can speak like that. You can say, sir, आप कहाँ पड़े हुए ये सब चीजों में? You are the next chief minister. What you are doing? ये आप क्या कर रहे हैं कि रोड मोड़ रहे हैं अपने 20 एकड़ फार्म हाउस से? You are the next minister. And just imagine if people comes to know, if the opposition comes to know, what would they feel? Obviously, these are just persuasion tactics. Do you get it? So this is the fear. Now the relief is, so just imagine if we put this into public eye, that we followed all the rules, there is minimum land acquisition, proper compensation, no removal or less removal of green cover. Imagine the kind of credit that you will gain. मैं तो पर्दे के पीछे रहता हूँ, ठीक है ना? I uphold anonymity. So you are going to attend this enclave, that conference, that convention, you are going to travel to this country, that city, you will meet this newspaper journalist. मैं तो कल भी दफ्तर ही आऊंगा, तो कौन ले जाएगा पूरा क्रेडिट? आप. You understand that? So this is a kind of persuasion. Obviously, here what you have to write in the examination, you have to say that if there is an inquiry commission in the future, that could be detrimental to the image of the administration. And the relief is we follow due process that would help us sail through all kinds of uncertainties. Even if there is an allegation, we will come clean of it. Do you understand that? When you're writing, you have to write all this. वो नहीं जो मैंने बोला अभी, ठीक है? अगर persuasion काम नहीं किया, ठीक है? अगर आपने बोला कि सोचो सर कि अगर इंक्वायरी कमीशन बैठ गई और उसने पकड़ लिया कहीं, तो आपका नाम आ जाएगा. उसने बोला, मिनिस्टर ने बोला कि आने दे, 10 में आए हुए हैं, ये 11वां केस है मेरा, ठीक है? और चीफ मिनिस्टर क्या, मैं तो कुछ भी और भी बनूंगा, आगे कैबिनेट मिनिस्टर भी बनूंगा, कि वही बन के तो अभी मिनिस्टर बना हूं मैं, ये सब करके. तो आप क्या करोगे? Just imagine something like that. Obviously there what you have to do is you have to follow the rule book. And what is the rule book? You have to highlight your reservations through the noting section. Now look here very carefully. ठीक है? It looks like what? The answer sheet, QCA. Now why this kind of answer sheet has been created? आज समझ लो. Because central government files look like this. Do you get that? All India services or other central services files look like this. Government of India files look like this. From state to state there could be minor variation. And how are the files? The files are like this. You have a margin on the left and you have a broader margin on the right. Do you get it? This section is known as the noting section, where you note your points, and this is known as the drafting section, where you add more clauses or you modify the clauses if you are not happy with the text of the clause or the content of the clause. So the proposal, you are a senior official, obviously, so it is in your possession before it has been shown in the public. So these are the proposals that have been highlighted. And the minister is saying what? Minister is saying flout the guidelines, change the proposals. Do you understand that? So what you do is, in the noting section, you write that to my mind, the proposal is designed after taking all the things into consideration. There is minimum land acquisition, minimum compensation, so less burden on the public exchequer. There is minimum green cover clearance, so less loss of biodiversity, and due process has also been followed. Any change in this proposal is against public interest, which I do not recommend. Seal, sign, post, name. Do you understand that? तो फाइल कैसे होगी? एक ऑफिशियल से दूसरे ऑफिशियल के पास जाएगी, सब अपने अपने नोट्स लिखेंगे, तो जब मिनिस्टर के पास पहुंचेगी तो मिनिस्टर को लिखना पड़ेगा, आई प्रपोज द रोड टू बी realigned. Do you think he is going to do that? No, never. Further, if an RTI application is filed, this counts as part of RTI information. Keep this in mind. The noting sections. Okay. So यहाँ पे draft आप add कर सकते हो. Suppose you want some new clause to be added. So here we don't follow the drafting part. I'm saying the noting section. So you highlight your reservations through noting. Can you do that? Is that part of your procedure? You can do that. That you can highlight that this is what I felt. I will do whatever you want me to do, but this is what I have felt and I have written. अब देखो कैसे, तो जिसे कहते हैं ना टांगे कांप जाएंगी कि कुछ नहीं लिख सकते, वो कैसे करेंगे? Yes, putting on record, same as noting. Okay. Then अगर समझ लो आपने नोटिंग किया, आपने नोटिंग करके बताया कि ऐसा होना चाहिए और इसके थ्रू you can convince him. Okay. Suppose he is not following that as well. He says that आपने लिखा होगा, मैं नहीं लिखूंगा, फिर भी वैसा ही होगा. There could be a politician like that. What would you do? See, it is common knowledge and an open secret that among the ministers, some of them in the history of Indian politics, some of them have had serious charges against them, corruption, murder and what not. तो वो तो बोलेंगे कि हमने तो मनी पावर, मसल पावर यूज करके आए हैं, हम इलेक्शन जीते आए हैं, इसीलिए ये आदमी रोक रहे हैं हमको ये सब करने से. They will say we'll do. Now here is where most of the aspirants, they show ethical frustration, something that comes out of ethical fatigue. क्योंकि आपको लगा अब और क्या करूं, सब तो कर लिया मैंने. Do you understand that? And what do they suggest? We go to the media. We'll go to the media and disclose the events. Now here you see, you are unnecessarily going to the media right now. Why? Because nothing has been concretized. It's still in the planning process. First. Second, by going to the media directly as your first choice, you are showing lack of faith in the system which you want to join. You understand that? आप ये बता रहे हो कि सिस्टम कमजोर है, मीडिया ज्यादा पावरफुल है, तो जाओ जर्नलिस्ट बनो, सिविल सर्वेंट क्यों बनना? Are you understanding it? So what you have to do is, the third option would be, again follow the procedure, follow due process, write to seniors, prepare a report about the issue and send it to whom? Send it to Chief Secretary, Cabinet Secretary. They are your seniors. Send them that, sir, this is what I have found. ये तो internal हुआ ना, किसी को पता भी नहीं चलेगा. The prestige of the administration will also be in place. Do you get it? You can also send a copy of that report to the Honorable Chief Minister or to the Honorable Prime Minister, even to the Honorable President of India. Her Excellency, you can send that report to her as well. Okay, highlighting that, madam, this is what I thought would be the right course of action. And please look into the matter that this is maintained. Now you are showing courage, fortitude to stand against a corrupt minister, which is expected from a senior civil servant. Do you understand that? And obviously you can highlight that this is what is happening. देखो कैसे सही हो जाता है सारा मामला इससे. अगर इन सब से भी कुछ नहीं हो रहा, then you go and you take your fourth step. And what is that? Be a whistleblower. Is that legal? Is that a legal step? Yes, because you will be doing that under Whistleblower Protection Act 2014. So it's a legal step. Do you understand that? Rather than going to the media, you can be a whistleblower. Rather than sensationalizing the issue, you can actually resolve the issue and bring it into public attention. You can be a whistleblower. On the basis of that whistleblowing, there could be a PIL also filed in any judiciary. Do you understand that? Any court, there could be a PIL. So this could motivate activists to file PIL, public interest litigation. So you are upholding what? You're upholding public interest. You're not allowing it to fall down under any circumstance. Okay. तो ये आप कर सकते हो. Now, obviously the first two cannot be our steps. 3 and 4 can be our steps. But question paper में क्या लिखा होता है? Choose the most appropriate course of action. What do you pick between 3 and 4? Order will be what? 3, 4 or 4, 3? 3, 4. Do you understand that? So this would be my step 1. This is what you show. This is step 1 and this is step 2. If step 1 doesn't work, then step 2. Do you get it? So you have addressed all the 3 questions, but your answer is far from over. Now you have to do what? You have to give ethical justification of your move. So let's try to do that. Now, in ethical justification, highlighting 2 scholars or 2 thoughts will be enough, even 1 will be enough. But here, for the sake of convenience, because this is kind of model case study, that's why I am highlighting more than 2. Okay, but in every case, keep it in mind that go for only 1 or 2. Just go on. Whistleblowing process means that being into the system, you leak the information of the system if there is something, some wrongdoing is going on within the system. Okay, you don't divulge into public the confidential information. That is not whistleblowing. That is actually, in some countries, that is considered as a crime. Do you understand that? Whistleblowing means when something is bad happening within the system, you know it, and if it happens, it will be against public interest. So you disclose that what malified practice is going on. That is whistleblowing. So those who do this show courage. So for them, there has to be a protection. That protection is given by the Whistleblowing Protections Act. Okay, 2014. To anybody, you can just write a letter to any media house. Do you get that? Anonymous letter. No need of like highlighting who you are, because anonymity has to be maintained in whistleblowing. Otherwise, people will come after you. All those with vested interest will start hunting you. So let's see what are the ethical justifications. First could be social contract. As a part of the social contract, the government has been created to enforce the contract, and the contract has to be in the interest of the people. But here the government or some of the officials in the government along with minister may try to subvert the contract. Do you understand that? So social contract of Hobbes, the Hobbesian logic, you can use that to justify. Second is, think of, say, deontological ethics of Kant. You can use that, and you can highlight the principle of categorical imperative. The first formulation or the second formulation? Formula of universality or the formula of humanity? Also formula of autonomy, you can use any of them. Categorical imperative says what? That morality has to be based on an obligation to perform a particular duty. And whenever you are performing the duty, ensure that if everybody else also start performing a similar duty, will you be happy with it or not? Never use anybody as means to an end, always see everybody as an end. You understand that? Then think about the Maximin principle of Rawls. Says what? If there is advantage flowing out of something, it should go to the most disadvantaged. Is it going to the most disadvantaged or to a minister? To a minister. Is it going to the, say, the farmers? No. You get it? Then think of Plato's cardinal virtues like all the four: prudence, temperance, justice, fortitude. Show all of them. Then utilitarianism of both Bentham, you can use the hedonic calculus there, and Mill, John Stuart Mill. Higher forms of pleasure and long-term pleasure. Is that higher form of pleasure and long-term pleasure? No, definitely not. Okay. Then think of Aristotle's golden mean. How Aristotle's golden mean is applicable here? Because you are not going directly to the media, nor you are accepting the proposal. You have adopted a middle path. You are persuading the minister not to do it. You are using the procedures. So that is middle path. Do you understand that? You are showing faith in the system. Also, not only golden mean, but Aristotle's scale of morality or the spectrum of morality. Here you are showcasing yourself as a virtuous person. Remember, vicious, incontinent, continent, and virtuous. So you're showing yourself as virtuous person. Also, think of Saint Thomas Aquinas' doctrine of double effect. You will make private gain, but at what cost? At the cost of corruption. Do you understand that? So the good is flowing from the bad. So you cannot do that as well. Then think about, say for example, Thiruvalluvar's morality. What did Valluvar suggested? Do not take the money if it comes from unfair means, even when your mother is starving. Do you understand that? You can always use that. Okay. Then think of Carol Gilligan's ethics of care. Are you showing sufficient care to the weak and vulnerable sections of the society? Like say for example, think about the farmers when you are doing or opting for that move. Do you get it? Then think of, say, Hume's is ought gap, because it brings you pleasure. Is it good? All that is pleasurable is not profitable. You can always say that. You can keep on adding, right? Now, can you see the magic of having command over these sections? Otherwise, you will not be able to justify what you are choosing for. But then again, here also the answer doesn't stop. You have to provide the way forward. What could be the way forward under this scenario? First is, you have to think from all angles. First is, strengthen the law, or if it is already a strong law, implement the law. What law is here into question? There is something called the Prevention of Corruption Act. Okay. Then this first thing. Then institutional structures and procedures, they have to be strong. Like say for example, think about anti-corruption and vigilance bodies. They have to be strong and independent in such kind of scenarios, so that nobody can even think of doing such things. Then there has to be empowerment of the citizens so that they know what they are seeking. This could be done by implementing the RTI properly, citizens charters and grievance redressal officers. You can do that, okay, so that citizens feel empowered, and there is always a threat in the mind of all those kind of people who work with vested interest that they may be produced in the people's court. Then there has to be disclosures and proper audit of everything. This could be done by installing independent or social audit. Then there has to be a culture of transparency that has to be developed. तो आप ये नहीं बता रहे हो कि बस मेरा तो काम हो गया, I disagreed. You are also giving a kind of suggestion that what needs to be done if you want to eliminate these kind of things. So you have justified your answer, and now you are giving the way forward, that what has to be the way forward. Strengthening of the law, implementation of the law, strengthening of the institution, empowerment of the citizen, and building a culture of transparency, accountability, information sharing, and auditing. Do you get that? Now it is the time to exit. So you can exit now by using, say, quotes. You can also exit by using a thought as well, but it has to be written like a quote, not necessarily ascribed to someone. It could be just your thought. Do you understand that? So some of the quotes that make sense here is, say, Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." आज हो गया ये, तो आगे भी ऐसा होता रहेगा. Do you understand that? Then Jose Angel Gurria Trevino. Jose Angel Gurria Trevino. Now, who is he? He is a Mexican diplomat and economist. Why is he so important? Because he was the former Secretary General of OECD. What did he say? He said, integrity, transparency, and fight against corruption has to be a part of the culture. They have to be taught as fundamental values. Write it down. Integrity, transparency, and fight against corruption. Integrity, transparency, and fight against corruption have to be part of the culture. Have to be part of the culture. Put a full stop. They have to be taught as fundamental values. As fundamental values. Put a hyphen. You can write Angel Gurria, or you can write his full name, Jose Angel Gurria Trevino. Angel Gurria, A-N-G-E-L-G-U-R-R-I-A. Gurria. Okay. Full name is Jose Angel Gurria Trevino, Mexican diplomat and economist, former Secretary General OECD. He said, integrity, transparency, and fight against corruption are to be part of the culture. They have to be taught as fundamental values. Good close to the case. And that's how you make that graceful exit. You understand that? Once you do all of this, just see, so you identified the stakeholders, you identified the conflict of interest, you also highlighted the responsibilities, evaluated the options, gave the ethical justification, suggested the way forward, and then made the exit. Do you get it? और ऐसे अगर करोगे, then अगर तुम्हारे केस स्टडी को नंबर नहीं मिल रहे तो किसी को नहीं मिले. You understand that? You will get good marks in the case studies. So out of 20, if you produce a case, like if this was the potential answer in the examination hall, and obviously you can understand this cannot be done without practice. In the examination hall, you will just come up with whatever you think randomly. That would be your morality and not ethics. That's why we will be doing 100 case studies in the class, including this one. It's 101. Do you understand that? तो एक ये शगुन का है, ऐसे समझ लो, ठीक है. But 100 case studies we are going to do in the class from tomorrow onwards, so that you learn the art of case study writing. Out of those 100 case studies, some of the PYQs have also been included, so that we get the taste of that as well. तो अगर आप ऐसा लिखते हो तो इसमें आपको 14 तक मिल सकता है, 14-15 तक भी मिल सकता है, डिपेंड करता है. Do you understand that? So if you get 15, suppose, which is possible, in 6 case studies, your marks are 90, है ना. तब तो आप फिर उसमें 70 वगैरह लाकर 160 तक जा सकते हो. Possible है. Do you understand that? It's possible. There are so many people who have got 160 plus. मैं आपसे क्या कह रहा हूँ, कितना मिलेगा? इतना तो मिलेगा. पहले दिन से कह रहा हूँ ये मैं, और हो जाएगा if you practice properly. Okay, so did you understand? If you have any questions, you can ask, then I'll tell you. Yes, go on. नहीं, वो ऑप्शन के साथ होगा. कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट के साथ नहीं होगा, वो ऑप्शंस के साथ होगा हमेशा, मेरिट और डिमेरिट. हाँ. हाँ, यहाँ भी लिख सकते हो, बट इट वुड बी लाइक टू say crowded. It will not be, I mean, the reader will not be able to understand what you are trying to say, because you are writing with a thought flow. At that time, maybe the evaluator might not understand the thought flow while he would be evaluating. It's like evaluating your rough copy and your fair copy. दोनों में फर्क होगा ना. So fair copy, it's like very neat and clean, legible, structured, etc. You get that? You can do that if you are severely struggling with time. Then you can do that. हाँ, थॉट हो गया वो. नाम मत लिखो फिर किसी का, अपना नाम मत लिख देना बस, ठीक है ना. लिख सकते हो आप कुछ भी. ऑब्वियसली इतने कोट्स आपको याद रहेंगे नहीं. मैं आपको 100 देने वाला हूँ, हर केस स्टडी का एक, ठीक है. तो यू कैन उसमें से 10 तो निकाल के रख सकते हो ना अपने लिए. दैट आई विल बी डूइंग. सो फ्रॉम टुमारो हाउ द क्लासेस वुड बी. This is how we are going to conduct the classes. We'll take 10 case studies tomorrow in tomorrow's class, but with time I can just increase it to 11, 12, 13 also in some of the classes, right? Depends upon how quickly you people are learning. After 2 classes, you will be well versed with ethics, integrity and aptitude. आज की क्लास हो गई और कल की क्लास जैसी हो जाएगी, you can appear actually for the paper. You understand that? मतलब आपको फंडामेंटली कोई चैलेंज नहीं आएगा. हाँ, रिवीजन की वजह से आ सकता है चैलेंज. स्टिल वी विल होल्ड मोर क्लासेस. व्हाई? प्रैक्टिस. डू यू अंडरस्टैंड दैट? प्रैक्टिस की वजह से ही हम ये और चीजें करेंगे. सो यू हैव गॉट अ केस स्टडी वर्कबुक. सो व्हाट आई विल डू इज दैट आई विल डिस्कस द केसेस and we will just go through slides, okay, and then I'll give you hints for every case study. In fact, those hints will be comprehensive. अगर उतना भी लिख दोगे तब भी मार्क्स आ जाएंगे, but I want you to use those hints, go back and write in your workbook. Do you get it? So the first 10 case studies हम करने वाले हैं कल. तो अगर आपके पास वर्कबुक है अभी तो what you do is you read those 10 case studies, okay, but don't write anything in the workbook. Carry a pencil with you and carry your workbook if possible. Got it? At the end of the class, this PDF, whatever I will be discussing in the class, will be shared with you, so that you can use that and you can learn your case studies. But problem क्या है इसमें देखो, इसमें ये प्रॉब्लम कि बहुत सारे लोग क्या करते हैं कि उसको जमा करते रहते हैं बस PDFs को, और वो कुछ करते नहीं है. So that's why try to write it in the workbook, otherwise you're not going to learn case study. After essay, this is percentage wise highest scoring part in the entire examination. ठीक है? After essay, किसी एक क्वेश्चन की अगर हम बात करें उसमें यहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा मार्क्स आ सकते हैं. So overall, obviously the optional paper gives more marks, but question wise अगर आप देखोगे केस स्टडी में बहुत अच्छे मार्क्स आ सकते हैं. Those who are scoring 150 plus are definitely getting 90 in case studies, or at least 80 plus in case studies, 70 plus in the theory section, 150 plus. ठीक है? Out of 120, 90 possible है case studies में. क्योंकि कैसे काटे आपका नंबर, आपने तो सब कुछ कर दिया, कहाँ काटे आपके नंबर थ्योरी में. इसलिए, और मैं आपको क्या कह रहा हूँ कि अगर थ्योरी में आप 65 भी ले आते हो, इसमें 70 ले आते हो, तब भी 135 हो जाता है. You understand that? It's possible, right? Is it not possible? Say yes or no. Possible, very much possible. The point is what? Point is practice. If you fail to practice, then you will struggle. By failing to prepare, we are preparing to fail. ठीक है ना? याद रखना. तो इसकी वजह से you have to prepare and you have to practice a lot. So tomorrow we are having one class, only one class at your normal timings, and we'll be doing the first 10 case studies. Okay? So go back today, make this thing, मतलब फेयर करके अपनी नोटबुक में आप लिख लेना how to write case studies. इसको पूरा आप अच्छे से लिख लेना. Read that over and over 2-3 times, and then you try to take the case studies and with pencil you can solve it in the rough sheet. या मार्जिन में जो आपके वर्कबुक है उसके मार्जिन में भी आप कुछ लिख सकते हो पॉइंट्स, हिंट्स, इससे कि जब हम क्लास में डिस्कस करें तो वी सेव टाइम. अदरवाइज यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड 10 केस स्टडीज विल टेक, अगर एक पे हम एक घंटा बात करें तो बोलो क्या हो जाएगा फिर. So that's why we will be doing it very quickly. So we have 2.5 hours at our hands, so you can understand that roughly we'll give 15 minutes to every case study. So for that you have to do some homework on your own. Is it clear to everybody? Okay, so we close here. Thank you very much. See you in the next one.